Welcome to As the Story Grows. I'm Brian Patton. Today we welcome Jason Camacho from Audio Karate to the podcast. Audio Karate released their new 7-inch, Show of Hands, on July 30th via Iodine Recordings. Jason talks about the importance of La Bamba, challenging himself to write differently than other bands in the scene, the joy of working in an actual studio, being inspired by Thrice, and so much more. Jason was an absolute delight to talk to, and a huge thanks goes to Casey at Iodine for connecting the two of us. Casey is an all-around great human, and if you haven't listened to my chat with Casey, put it in your feed to jam after you listen to today's chat with Jason. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast service of choice. I think there's going to be a bonus episode this week, so you won't want to miss that. Make sure to check out the Discord server and email list in the show notes. Those are the best and only ways to stay up to date and interact with the podcast. So come hang. Enjoy today's chat with Jason Camacho from Audio Karate. Yeah, you sound good. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
That's great. My Focusrite died on yesterday. That I've had for 13 years. So it was like right before an interview, the whole thing just like static popped and then went black, and I was like, no. What?
Oh, dude.
So I quickly ordered this M Audio from Amazon so I could continue the interview. And when I used it earlier today, I was like, I'm distorting pretty hot. This is a much hotter or higher preamp than the Focusrite. So
yeah, no, the Scarlett works, man. It's decent. Yeah. In fact, for Return of a Monster in Disguise, so the B-side on Show of Hands, I tracked all of my parts into the Scarlett into GarageBand.
Nice.
Sent those down to Mike, who put them in with the rest of the band, and dude, you can't tell. We've recorded in really, really nice studios, obviously, and I don't know. It's like drinking wine for me. I know what I like and what I don't like, but I can't discern, like, oh my God, that's an emulator, or that's through an SSL board, or through GarageBand. Like, at some point, you can't tell. Does the song suck, right? Right.
I was just gonna say, like, it's weird how technology has progressed so much to like push us in. I have a degree in recording, and it's like when I finished school, the Digi 002 for Pro Tools had just come out, and it's like digital recording wasn't this thing yet. All my training was to tape, and then it was like all useless immediately.
Yeah, because that one, so the stuff we did for Malo and some of the Otra stuff, that was all in a Digi 002. Man. And that's when it was really kind of on the forefront of, man, this is accessible. And in theory, we can just track it all out and then farm out mixing to someone at a real studio. Yeah. And then they could run it through a Trident or some Neve board and like make it sound really, really pretty. But yeah, instantly it changed it, and it's really odd.
Yeah. It's got to be useful to a band like you guys who never like crested that mountain. It was like you hit the scene when it was oversaturated. It's like right sound, right time. But you can have a long career because like you don't have to pay thousands, $500,000 to go to a studio anymore for a label. You just plug in your guitar into GarageBand and let's go.
It's funny to think now, our original contract with Kung Fu was 4 options, and it was 20 grand, 30 grand, 40 grand, 100 for the 4th record.
Wow.
And no one gets that anymore. Like, no. It's just not necessary, right?
Yeah.
Like I'd imagine like Blasting Room and places like that, they're probably not doing records for much more than 20 or 30K.
Yeah.
And that's probably for like a Hot Water Music or an Alk Trio or something.
Yeah.
But everyone else, you just kind of farm it out.
Yeah. Let's go back in time. You grew up in California?
Did. Born and raised in the suburbs east of Los Angeles and then in East LA proper, which growing up, you have no frame of reference, right? Because that's what you're born into. And then when we started touring in earnest, the gravity of just how dense of an area we grew up in and how diverse it was really kind of hit us like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
That once we started touring like the Midwest and the South, it was like super pronounced of, wow, we don't look like everyone else. Art, is pretty dark skinned, and Justo's name is Justo. And the first time someone's like, Justo, Gusto, and I'm like, no, man, like you never met a Mexican. Like, it was super pronounced, but it was super cool because it was all positive. I've touched on this on a couple of other podcasts, but if there was ever any animosity or anything weird about us, like not being white guys in the scene, it would never came to our attention.
Yeah.
But it was pretty pronounced. We didn't look like everyone else on the cover of Alternative Press. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Growing up in DC and like in the suburbs of DC, it's the same. It's like one of the most diverse counties in the country. And then like my wife's from Alabama and she did not have a diverse experience growing up. And so it's just funny how where you grew up changes like your perspective on the world. Totally.
But it was cool. We were able to play LA, and I think early on Orange County, Chain Reaction and the Showcase Theater out in Corona and like the Inland Empire, that scene was really starting to come up. Like bands like Rufio, that we were able to play with, and we were going from playing like coffee shops to 20 people to headlining Glass House, and those dudes are selling out the House of Blues, and were able to take us along for the ride for some of that. So it was an opportune place and time for sure.
Yeah. What got you into music?
Music was always in the house. My dad played drums, but kind of a weird thing, because Dad was a police officer. So there was always drums in the house, and I can remember distinctly being able to like kick, hat, snare at probably the age of 4 or 5.
Nice.
And I think that really helped in that Gabe, our drummer, is my first cousin. His first exposure to the drums was being around my dad's kit, and he like super latched onto it. But I found that my approach to music is always through sort of the lens of a drummer, even though I'm a guitarist kind of through and through. Gabe would hate to hear this, but I would argue that a lot of our kind of drum patterns that extend out of sort of the crazy fills and shit that he does, but like the rudimentary stuff, I think I have as big of a hand in as he did, as like, anyone can do that. Let's do something that would be really, really different, right? Like, and that's, yeah. So that's kind of what guided it. A lot of soul music, a lot of old Motown and sort of blue-eyed soul, groups like Average White Band or stuff like Tower of Power. Definitely not your conventional like punk rock stuff. I do have an older brother, and I'd say right around when I was 10 and he was like 14 or 15, he started listening to Misfits a lot. And that was kind of the beginning of the punk rock stuff. That segged into like Descendants. And by the time I heard Milo Goes to College, I'm like, this is fucking it, right? This is like everything. 12 years old, I went to go see Rancid at the Hollywood Palladium for the Let's Go tour. And that was my first like proper show. And the Palladium, I don't know if you've ever been out to Hollywood, but it's, I think, a 2,000 cap room, and it's like an old like swing kind of ballroom place. But that was the first time hearing a band. I'd been through to like backyard gigs and stuff, but you hear like a full fucking PA like that, where the kick drum just goes through your spine. You're like a 90-pound kid. I'm like, oh fuck, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen or heard. And that was enough to kind of solidify it. I mean, by then we were sort of tinkering around with like the earlier sort of version of what would become Audio Karate.
Yeah.
But yeah, that by that time, dude, this is all I want to do is fucking be a punk rocker and listen to music. Listen to a lot of Smiths growing up. If you're a Mexican kid from East LA, like you hit a certain age where the Smiths and Morrissey are like fucking idolized. So Johnny Marr, huge influence, even though it may not immediately come out, but a lot of the open chord stuff, or just I want it to sound unique, right?
Yeah.
And that was kind of always an aim for us, is like, what can we do in good taste, and what can we do that's familiar but is not sort of atypical, right?
Yeah.
I feel like, okay, I guess we play punk music, and maybe there's like an emo tinge or something, but I think it's pretty musical without like, oh, we're math rock weirdos.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and then it was interesting to see sort of by like 99, as bands like Jimmy Eat World were really touring a lot, and Get Up Kids, like ahead of Something to Write Home About, we started listening to those bands and kind of transitioned out of being like sort of Epitaph, Fat Record kids into like, oh shit, these bands are rad, and At the Drive-In and No Knife, and okay, let's really try pushing how angular and kind of discordy we can make it, but not really lose sight of sort of the Descendants kind of energy and sort of approach to, you can never go wrong with boy girl sort of musical dynamics, right? 100 years from now, like, as long as people still make music and it isn't all AI, boy girl or some version of Lover's Lament will like always be at the forefront of music, because there's always someone experiencing love and heartache and unrequited love. Like, that will never end as long as human beings are around. So yeah, that's kind of a wordy foray into music.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I told Art when he was on, I don't remember what record it was, if it's the first one or the second one, where I was like, it just sounds like you're an angry Get Up Kids. Like, they were so like poppy and happy, and you guys are just like the angry version of that.
Yeah, well, they grew up in the plains of Kansas. It's funny, as I like to troll our own Twitter, and I'll post shit like, if the Get Up Kids were Chicanos from LA, they would have sounded like Audio Karate. And I think I stand behind that.
Yeah.
I also stand behind, I think the Get Up Kids don't get the same accolades or place in sort of the history of like emo, for lack of better words.
Yeah.
That I think they do or should. I think the reverence that like Jimmy Eat World rightfully holds. I fucking love Jimmy Eat World. I saw him like 2 nights ago.
Oh, nice.
But I feel like Get Up Kids, man, like they don't hold that same place, but their records and their songs and the significance of the change they made to the scene kind of nationally, and the push. Everyone started wearing Chuck Taylors and like thrift store shirts after seeing Get Up Kids.
Yeah.
And I think no one wanted to sound like a Fat Records band the moment they heard 4 Minute Mile.
Right.
But like, if that makes sense. I think they inspired and so many people ripped them off, and no one does it as well. Like, Get Up Kids records are fucking great.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think they're like shift away from like that 4 Minute Mile and Something to Write Home About sound, where they started to experiment and go more like alt country. I think that is probably what turned people off, where they get less respect, because they were like, well, we did that really well already, so we're going to try something new.
Yeah. You can't make Something to Write Home About again.
Right?
2.0, right? Like that becomes boring rather. Yeah, I like everything they do.
Yeah, same. What if your dad was a drummer and you could play drums? What then led you to guitar?
The movie La Bamba.
Okay, somebody else mentioned that the other day.
Dude, like, that's the first time, and I don't think it's coincidence, but I've always played Strats, or I recently got a Telly, but I distinctly remember if that movie came out in probably like 86 or 87, I was again 4 or 5 years old. And that was the first time I ever saw a guitar, and it's that Sunburst fucking Strat he's playing. And he was cool. And then it helps that, like, you know, Mexican American kind of scene and culturally, like, that always resonated and I think was always back there. Yeah, and just my grandpa played trio music, which is like Mexican folk music, I guess, for lack of better words, like romantic kind of folk song, generally 3 people, 2 guitars, and then either some form of violin or bass. And it's like very harmonic rich. So he was always like Friday and Saturday nights was grandma and grandpa's house. And we're talking like fucking 20 cousins and like 10 aunts and uncles and cigarettes and poker till 3 a.m. And then once everyone was hammered, the guitar would come out and singing. So I remember picking it up, and the first time I realized, like, oh, you hold a fret and you move your finger and there's all these fucking sounds. It's effectively like limitless possibilities. That was really appealing and really alluring, and still kind of is, man. I've sort of my approach, and I'm sure this is not unique to me, and I don't want to try to make it sound like it is, but I've never been one to say, like, I'm going to consciously write a song, consciously write a riff, like consciously do this, and I'm going to work at it till I do it. It's the same guitar I've picked up for, you know, since I was fucking 10 or whatever. And sometimes it's there.
Yeah.
And I just, for whatever reason, my hands fall in a place they've never been, and they pluck and strum in a way they never have. And it resonates with something somewhere in there. And then I'm like, oh, fuck, that's the riff. And that becomes insert Audio Karate song. And then other times I'll fart around for 30 minutes and absolutely nothing sounds good. And I know, like, don't even try. Like, there's nothing you can do right now that's going to make a song happen. Fucking put it down. They either happen like that or they don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you find yourself messing around with tunings a lot to try to see if you can come up with something different that you've ever done before?
No. Art, because he plays in Sweet and Tender Hooligans, it's like Smiths and Morrissey cover band. It's a recurring theme in the Audio Karate universe, right? He got into like having a capo because Smith's got really kind of wild tunings, right?
Yeah.
So then we introduced that for Audio Karate because there's some stuff like a lot of the Lady Melody shit we have to tune down a half step because it was just brutal on Art's voice. But I've tried it, and my hands are going to do what my hands do. Like, I've got weird double jointed arthritis fingers anyway. And I consciously go like, okay, if this is where most conventional songs go, my hands can never go there. Like Lady Melody, I don't play one single power chord. And that was a very conscious thing. Like, if I don't do this, it will sound different than everyone else. I remember we're in pre-production for that, and Bill Stevenson's like, okay, run through that bridge. And we're like playing the part, like, okay, everyone stop playing. Jason, like, what the fuck are you doing? I'm like, oh, dude, like 7, 5, 8, but you skip the next string and you go down. And he's like, that's not even in key with the song, but it works. I'm like, okay, like, I don't know, dude. Like, I don't know how to play guitar. Like, I know how to write Audio Karate songs.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was stuff like that. And that dude is, you know, he's been around and can play music. Very serious musician, right? So I knew when we were doing that, like, okay, we're onto something. Like, this is cool. People will have a hard time tabbing this out.
Yeah.
I like to be like a tab perverter. Hey, dude, can you tab out your song? Not really. Like, I don't know how. And I get sick pleasure out of the 1 or 2 people that like will put up cover videos on YouTube. I'm like, no, that's not quite right.
That's so funny.
And why can't
how did Audio Karate get started?
So Gabriel and I, our drummer, are cousins. His best friend since kindergarten is Justo, our bassist. So by sort of proxy, we've been friends since, God, I was probably 9 or 10. Art went to middle school with those guys, or junior high, as they call it on the West Coast. So they were playing with another guitar player and another singer in various bands through like middle school and high school. And I always was kind of on the periphery because I didn't go to school with them. And they had a falling out with the guitar player ahead of a high school talent show. And it was like, put me in, coach. Like, you don't know the songs. Like, fuck you. I've been to like 100 of your practices. And that was that. And nice. Then the singer went to the Navy out of high school. So Art jumped into that, and we scrapped all the songs we had previously written. And, backyard shows and stuff like that. And then somehow we were able to finagle our way into starting to play shows at Chain Reaction. Kind of pay to play, but not really. Like they would have you sell sort of tickets and like opening for bands that were like nationally touring. And we recorded a demo that had about half the songs from Space Camp. I think I was still, God, we wrote half that record when I was like 16. And Art and I went to a show in Orange County that the Ataris were playing, and I had never heard the Ataris, but Art's like, hey, we should go to this show. And he happened to give a demo to Chris Rowe, and they were still on Kung Fu at the time. And Chris gave it to Joe Escalante, and kudos to Chris, because I mean, I've gotten hundreds of CDs over the years, right? And you listen to them, and some are like, hey, that's kind of cool. And then some, it's like, wow, like this is, people are recording this. Okay. Kind of a dick move, but it's true. Right.
Yeah.
And Chris, kudos to him, man. He listened and was like, oh fuck, I like that song. And I guess he would make compilations to give to Joe of like, cause they toured so much around that time. Hey dude, here's 25 songs from 25 bands across the US that we think are cool. And Joe called Art, and I think Art initially like didn't call him back because he's like, someone's fucking with me. Like, this isn't Joe from the Vandals calling me. And he said, I like the songs and I want to hear some more songs, and set us up in a studio with Warren. It was Pennywise's studio in Hermosa, and Warren Fitzgerald worked the board, and he didn't say anything the entire time. And we're like, okay, Warren's a little different, but like, I fucking hate these songs. And Joe kind of courted us and encouraged us to keep writing, and helped us get on some kind of bigger shows, opening for Vandals and some bands, to see sort of if we can make that transition from like good local band to, okay, could you write a good record and actually do it? And we started recording our first record for them in 2001, and rest is kind of history from there.
Yeah.
It was a pretty quick, in retrospect, very lucky and very quick progression from being local band to record, national, international touring band.
Yeah.
And it was right on the cusp of mp3.com and things really starting to change. And it was sort of, we caught the end of, like we were talking recording budgets, we caught the end of sort of the bloated years of punk rock. Kung Fu had a European office. Fat had a European office. They had staff. They had, God, it must have been a really fucking expensive office building in Hollywood. Like within sort of our initial span, like the early 2000s edition of Audio Karate, that shit came and went like overnight. Right. And digital just fucking put a knife in it.
Yeah. Yeah. It was that time where like Green Day and Blink were super big, and then everybody went, oh, this punk thing is popular, and like all the labels signed everybody. It's like Tooth and Nail had 1 million punk labels, and Epitaph had 1 million, and you could go pick up compilations, and there's 40 bands that all sound similar enough. And it's just like, how do you distinguish and put one band over the next? And then just as quickly that came as this like mall emo boom took off, and if like your band just kind of ships in the night, right?
Yeah. And it was hard for us to tour with Vandals or Pooley or Strung Out, and I mean we would, and those audiences wouldn't entirely latch on, and we played with so many different bands and never really found a home, but yet we never like grew our hair out and got lip rings and did like the swishy emo thing. Like we were like, fuck that. So we never really got into sort of that scene either. Mm-hmm. So we never really found a home. We always just toured with the oddest bands, which was kind of cool. Like I like that it wasn't super homogenized, right? Like I don't feel like we were ever part of like a Victory Records scene where like, hey, here's the varsity bands, we take out the baby bands, and there's this slight variation on some component of what we do, but we do a lot of similar things. No knock to any of those bands, but I don't know. I just consciously, like, I think there were things that we maybe could have done that we were very conscious about. Hell no, we're not doing that, even if it means not reaching kind of broader audiences. Yeah. No swooshy hair. Never. Never we're going to go swooshy, lip ring kind of skinny jean guy. Plus, we were all kind of like husky jock dudes, so that wouldn't have worked out anyway. Yeah. But I think in retrospect, we're able to do what we do now because we didn't do that. Mm-hmm. And I think sort of some of the embarrassment of like, oh my God, I used to listen to that. I think we forego a little bit of that, where people are like, yeah, I used to listen to that. The band was kind of weird, and fuck, they were actually pretty good. That seems to be a sentiment we get. I would kick my own ass if I had a copy of Alternative Press from 2006 or something, and I had fucking snake bites and swooshy hair. I couldn't show that to my kids, right? Yeah.
Just the poster in the background. Yeah, this is when we were fucking huge.
Yeah, doing the hold your neck pose that every other guy on the cover of Alternative Press did.
Oh man, yeah. Does it? Do you think it's like the internet that has helped a band like you? Like, I don't know what in doing reunion shows and releasing old tracks. Like, I don't know how Otra did. I loved it. But with Otra releasing and you guys being on Iodine, it's like, oh, here's a band that I would have loved back in the day that I missed, but now I have access to all their back catalog. And so now I'm a fan. And so anytime you release something, I'm going to be there. Do you think that helped? Or is it just like the older people, we're the ones with the money now? So like, we're like, yeah, no, these bands fucking rule. Not that we have much money.
I think it's a bit of both of those things. Mm-hmm. I think the aim is we're trying to fill in the blanks of people who were around at that time, 2000 to 2006, let's say. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, we're into Bayside or insert any number of bands, and like, oh, I always remembered, they were on the Warped Tour compilation. I never checked them out, but now I have access to every song everyone's ever recorded, and going back and going, oh fuck, that band was good. They weren't some derivative like swooshy hair band. That's one part of it. We would like to fill in those blanks, and I think Iodine helps because they are so, in my mind, like East Coast Northeast kind of a label. Yeah. Even though Casey would probably tell you otherwise. Casey, you're full of it, dude. Whereas we were very much a SoCal band, right? So I think it was like, oh, well, they were like a skate punk band, right? It's like, not really. Yeah. If we would have been from Long Island, we would have been playing with those fucking bands and been a variation of sort of that scene. So I think we just want to fill in those blanks. I did Mike Herrera's podcast, and he was like, dude, how the fuck did I miss you guys? Like, this is up my alley. This is like totally my wheelhouse. And this is stuff I would have liked. Like, you guys should have been playing with MXPX. And I'm like, well, yeah, like that's what we're hoping, that people 35 to 45 go, oh, let me finally check that out. Hey, there's actually something here. And Iodine really facilitates that. It definitely helps that people of I'm going to assume you're about the same age as me. Sort of the came of age in 2000 demographic do have money now to spend, right? And we are very fortunate and blessed and super appreciative that there's a decent contingency of people who pick up everything we do and come see us every time we come to town. And that's not lost on us. That is fucking huge. And we really appreciate it. So if you're one of those people, thank you so much. But yeah, that's it. Like, I have no delusions that somehow we're going to turn into this big commodity that can, headline the House of Blues coast to coast. And with our family structures and stuff like that, we couldn't even facilitate that. So I think if we do, 20 shows a year and put out an EP or something every year or two, that's more than so many people get to do. And we're very appreciative that we have avenues to do that.
Let's talk about a show of hands. What led you guys to finally write and record a new song?
Well, it's fucking scary, dude. Like,
well, yeah.
There's so much self-doubt, right? Like, for every bit that a musician, gonna speak for myself, but I would think this speaks for others. For as much as you think like, oh, fuck yeah, we're sick and everything we do is rad, there's also that just horrible insecurity of, oh God, like, we got lucky with every song we ever wrote and we can never do that again, so why try? But at some point we're like, okay, we've got the same kind of catalog, like, tired of rehearsing these, let's try something different. And Gabriel is in our band, he's got OCD. So he fucking records everything. And now that he has an iPhone with him, he can, like, surreptitiously record every second of every practice. But I've got like 50 cassettes still where that dude would just like pack rat archive everything we ever did.
Oh man.
So he had recorded a practice and I was goofing off with the riff. And usually when we write a song, I'll play 20 riffs that I think are cool and Art will look disgusted. And I know, like, don't even bother. Like, you can't sell him on it. And then I'll play something where I see his, like, ear perk up and he'll turn his head. And then he'll just start writing and humming. He'll, like, play a chord progression and he'll start humming along. And that was a show of hands. And we did it. And then, like, a year or two went by. And Gabriel, in a weirdo tirade, like, sent out what the hell is the file that iPhones even record in? It's something goofy. But he texted that and we're all like, oh, what the fuck is this? He's like, oh, we should make a song. And I was already living in Oregon at the time. The guys are still down in Southern California. So they started rehearsing it and they would send me crude stuff and then I would just write to it. And we're like, oh, fuck, this is pretty decent. Like, I can sign off on this. And we went to New Monkey Studio, which was previously Elliott Smith's, and has all his gear and sort of the vibe and the spirits that come along with that. And one of the partners in it, Greg Cortez, he's, a freaking Hollywood, like, producer guy who does, like, R&B and, like, cool shit. But he was a scene kid that when he was in high school, like, Nintendo 89 is like his favorite song. So he had reached out online like, hey, if you guys ever record again, like, I work at this studio and I love you guys, I'll give you a bro rate. Like, I'm like, well, actually, we wrote a fucking new song, so yeah, we'll be there. How's like 3 weeks sound? So we went and we knocked it out. And I know you and I were talking about, like, it's so accessible because you can record anything at home, kind of DIY. That said, jumping on a fucking Trident board with, like, serious gear and serious mics and, like, oh, dude, that's a $4,000 50-year-old mic. Like,
Right.
you like that one? Like, yeah, let's use it. There's no substitution for that,
Yeah.
dude. Like, there's none. And the moment the drums are mic'd up and you go like, oh, fuck, this is going to be cool. We hadn't recorded in a studio proper since the Blasting Room.
Wow.
And that was 03.
Jeez.
So I feel like you do that and you bring your A game. It's easy when you kind of record it like a bro's garage studio. To like, fuck it, like half-ass it, but like, oh no, okay, big boy pants, like we're recording in a real studio, this shit can't suck. And that was that. And I would like to write more. I think Art would like to write more, but I don't know. It'll happen organically. Like, there's no agenda to like, hey, Iodine wants a record, so fuck it, let's just write 12 songs. 2 of them will be good. The rest will sound like the return of whatever. No real desire to do that. No desire to write like middle-aged guy experimental music. Hey, we're Fleet Foxes now, but let's put Audio Karate stamp on it because it'll sell 700 units, right? Like, that's I think that's disingenuous. I think we will write songs that make us happy first and foremost, and I feel like Bill and Descendants, like those guys are sort of our litmus test. Like, I don't want to record anything where they're like, man, this sounds like, fucking emo or something. Like, it's got to have some. I want those guys to be like, oh fuck yeah, like you guys went for all on this one. There's a couple people that I want to impress with everything we do. So yeah, that's how that came about, and the response has been good. Thankfully, it's been like, wow, this is good. You guys should have been doing this all along. It definitely sounds like an Audio Karate song, but I don't think it sounds like, oh, dude, this is just Jesus is Alive and Well 2.0. Like, come on, what is this shit? Like, you guys are hacks. It sounds like a band that hasn't written a song in 20 years, and this is what they sound like now. But no, and we're fortunate that I don't think so. We didn't take an advance or anything to do it. We recorded it, and I'm at the airport flying back to Oregon, and I get the rough mix. And it's basically just like the rough tracks, right? Faders up. And I texted to Casey. I'm like, hey, dude, we went to LA and recorded a song this weekend. If you like it, you want to put it out? He's like, dude, this is fucking great. Like, you got any more? I'm like, no, just this one. We'll get you a B-side. And then that happened around the time when Thrice redid Artist in the Ambulance.
Okay.
And I was like, this is fucking cool. Like, I really like that record first go around, and I felt like it was overly polished, which I like. Like, I love perfect records, right? That said, Thrice is like a band's band, and they sound really good when they're just playing. And I really liked it as like, oh, okay, this is what it sounds like now. And if they if we knew then what we know now. Mm-hmm. And when we did our first record, Space Camp, we were horribly unprepared. We didn't have guitars that were intonated. Gabriel wasn't playing to a click. It was a really fucking rough record. It's got its charms because it sounds like what it is, a bunch of high school kids with their hearts on their sleeves thinking they're going to become Blink 182 or some shit.
Yeah.
But we, in retrospect, like, the songs aren't done justice. I think the songs were good, but we were sort of batting out of our league in terms of what we could. Writing songs and playing shows and then making a record, I think, are two different skill sets. Yeah. And you get good at making records, or some people get good at making records, and then others just get good at sort of playing shows, and they never really do the two, right? So I'm like, well, fuck, Thrice did that. That makes sense. There doesn't seem to be a mutiny online of fuck this. This is like a money ploy. Everyone's like, no, this is bitching. It's just another facet. I'm like, okay, if we could redo Space Camp over, what would it sound like? And how to have the songs evolve to how we do them sort of live. And now that we could afford intonated guitars and we know what we're doing, like, let's re-record them. So we started with Monster in Disguise. And from all the streaming channels. You get so much feedback and so many metrics back. It's totally getting listened to more than a show of hands. So I think it's been accepted well.
I think it's one of the best songs you've ever recorded. Like that version, it sounds so good. And yeah, I love it.
Thanks, man. I fuck, like it pisses me off because I think if Space Camp would have sounded up to that quality, what might have been different, right?
Yeah.
Everything. I've lived long enough now and gone through enough kind of ups and downs to know everything sort of for a reason, and you end up where you're supposed to end up.
Yeah.
So I would change nothing, but yeah, it'd be interesting to know, like, fuck, if the whole record hit like that. So anyway, we went back and we re-recorded Halfway Decent, Drama Club Romance, and Rosemead over in one day, which I was like, fuck, we knocked out 3 songs in a day. As you know, like, that's some shit.
Yeah.
Live tracks with some overdubs, and Art just killed his vocal takes. I think he did like 2 or 3 of each song and was like, that's it, dude, comp it. That should be the song. But we can do that now. We could not do that then.
Yeah.
It was fucking pulling teeth and like, you're pulling sharp. That sounds shitty. Let's try that again. Okay, here comes the part. Oh, no, that was this part you were supposed to punch. you know, all those things.
Yeah.
And we're snotty kids at the time. So anyway, long story longer, we redid those. I'm super fucking happy with them. We did them at District Recording up in San Jose. And they came out really fucking cool. And I don't know how we're going to get them out there. I don't know if we like do the whole record and then we're like, hey, Space Camp Revisited or Space Camp Husto's version or Taylor's version or whatever, right? Or a series of EPs or something. But I'd be happy to email them over to you and you let me know what you think. I mean, if you like Monster in Disguise, I think these came out of like, oh, fuck, this is what the song should sound like. The performances were good. And it's just fun to record with the guys. It's a nice way to spend a day. So we went down, we did Gilman one day, recorded another day, and then went our separate ways.
Nice.
Yeah, dude.
That sounds rad.
It's got a nice, what do they got there? I think they're running a Neve board. Okay. And then a bunch of cool vintage gear. So it sounds, you'll dig it. Like you record, you'll be like, ooh, these tones are, I like this. This isn't triple rectifiers or something. We take nothing for granted. We're super thankful. We're going out to Chicago for the first time next weekend. So we'll be doing like a co-headline run with Tightwire, who are super good. And that'll be fun. So it's Chicago, Milwaukee, and Champaign, Illinois, which I did not know was a city. That'll be the 28th, 29th, and 30th. So come on out. We're doing LA August 18th, 19th in August. Check the social medias. And then we're doing Fest and Pre-Fest, which will be fun because we get to see Descendants and All, which fucking All is so good.
Yeah.
Like jazz played by punk guys. And I feel like the more you play music, the more you just bow down to All. Mm-hmm. It's fucking so stupid. So that'll be fun. And then after that, I don't know. I think we're going to keep recording. We've solicited another studio. I like 70s records like Zeppelin. You could tell they're different sessions. Yeah. Different, you know, that's not jarring to me. And I think we're going to kind of do that 2-song little bursts. So yeah, thank you so much for having me on. And yeah, I've got nothing else, man. I don't know how much longer we'll do it though. Yeah. Every time we put together shows, the anxiety of like, fuck, no one's going to turn up is too much. I'm like, why do I do this? Like, why do I torture myself? And then we play or we record. I'm like, oh, because this is fun. Yeah. Yeah. And then it's fucking the pits again. It's just peaks and valleys, man. Yeah. So it always is. One day Casey will be like, I'm not putting that shit out, dude. And then we'll be like, all right, that's it. Thanks, guys. I'm a pass on this one.
Casey would never.
I know, that's his problem. He probably should at some point.
Oh, man.
A little more business, a little less heart. But no, I appreciate it, man. This has been a good time, Brian. Thank you.
Well, I'm sick of living life to weakness. I would rather slip and die than live this life without you.
Thanks for listening to As the Story Grows. Our intro music was written and composed by Jeremy Hunt. The As the Story Grows theme is by Bob Nana. If you like what you hear, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and give us a rating and review. If you'd like to support the show financially, you can join us at patreon.com/asthestorygrows. Be a part of our community and join the ongoing conversation over on Discord. If you enjoy this episode, share it on social media with your friends. Much appreciated, and thanks for listening.